What if everything you believe about morality is a lie designed to control you? What if your sense of self, your values, your goals, your very sense of right and wrong was not truly your own, but implanted by unseen forces? And what if power didn't just exist in politics or money, but in the subtle expectations of culture, the hidden rules of language, the quiet guilt you carry every time you make a choice? Are you free, or are you just well-trained? These questions sit at the heart of Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy, a man often misunderstood, sometimes reviled, but rarely ignored. His concept of the will to power is not merely a theory of domination or physical strength. It is, at its core, a radical challenge to the assumptions we carry about power, morality, and the structure of society. Nietzsche didn't buy the popular idea that reason and progress were making humanity better and better. He said, underneath it all, there's a basic, raw drive in everything alive. He called it the will to power. It's not automatically evil or violent. It's the fundamental push in life, not just to stay alive, but to grow, express yourself, and make your mark on the world. Think about it. This isn't just battlefield power. An artist pours their will to power into creating something new. A thinker builds a whole system of ideas. A religious leader shapes behavior through moral codes. Nietzsche even said being humble could be a sneaky power move, a way to gain influence later. So power isn't just something a king has. It flows. It's in conversations, art, schools, even in how we define ourselves. It's rarely shouted, but it's always being pushed, always being felt. But what if Nietzsche's ideas were actually incorrect? What if power isn't the ultimate currency of life? What if the pursuit of dominance, self-overcoming, and value creation blinds us to the simple, necessary truths of human interdependence? Is meaning really forged by the few, or does it emerge through our relationships, our communities, and our shared vulnerabilities? Are we mistaking raw will for wisdom? These questions challenge Friedrich Nietzsche's doctrine of the will to power. While undeniably bold, his vision demands scrutiny. It elevates strength over compassion, autonomy over connection, and questions the very basis of morality. But in its quest to liberate the individual, does Nietzsche's philosophy neglect the cost of such freedom? Philosophical exploration, critiquing Nietzsche's core ideas. Nietzsche rejects universal morality, viewing it as a tool for the weak to constrain the strong. He casts suspicion on kindness, humility, and equality as covert expressions of resentment. But this view is uncharitable and incomplete. While power dynamics shape societies, not all values are power plays. Moral ideals like empathy, justice, and altruism may arise not from ressentiment, but from genuine recognition of mutual need. Philosopher Martha Nussbaum argues that emotions like compassion are central to ethical life, especially in pluralistic societies. Human vulnerability isn't a weakness to be overcome, but a shared condition that binds us together. Nietzsche may see morality as a form of constraint, but ethical principles often serve to protect the powerless, promote cooperation, and preserve dignity. To dismiss them as manipulative undercuts their real social function. Historical context: Nietzsche's radical response to his time. Nietzsche wrote in the shadow of cultural disillusionment. The Enlightenment's promises of reason and progress rang hollow in a world marked by growing mechanization, nationalism, and spiritual decline. He saw in modernity a crisis of meaning, and in traditional morality, a camouflage for fear and mediocrity. But Nietzsche's radical rejection of Enlightenment ideals failed to appreciate their long-term potential. While flawed, Enlightenment principles also laid the groundwork for democratic governance, human rights, and scientific inquiry. Figures like Immanuel Kant argued not for obedience, but for autonomy grounded in rational moral law, a different kind of self-mastery that doesn't hinge on domination. Nietzsche foresaw the collapse of religious certainty, but underestimated how secular moral systems could evolve in ways that promote both freedom and solidarity. Power dynamics, cooperation versus domination. Nietzsche's framing of power as the central driver of life ignores the evolutionary and social advantages of cooperation. Biologists and anthropologists alike point out that humans survived and thrived through collaboration, not solitary striving. Altruism, fairness, and social bonding are not illusions, they are adaptive. Modern philosophers like Michel Foucault, ironically influenced by Nietzsche, expand the concept of power but resist reducing everything to it. Foucault acknowledges that power shapes knowledge and identity, yet he also sees resistance, discourse, and care as forms of counterpower. Not all power is coercive, some is generative and shared. Nietzsche offers insight into how values can conceal will, but he risks flattening the moral landscape into a binary of strength versus weakness. This overlooks the nuanced ways people navigate life, through negotiation, vulnerability, and mutual respect. Psychological insight, the limits of self-creation. Nietzsche idealizes the Übermensch, a self-overcoming individual who creates values beyond good and evil. But psychology tells us that identity isn't forged in a vacuum. We are social beings, shaped by relationships, culture, and early emotional experiences. Carl Rogers and humanistic psychologists argue that self-actualization depends not on dominance, but on empathy, acceptance, and psychological safety. The pursuit of selfhood requires connection, not just confrontation. Moreover, the radical autonomy Nietzsche celebrates may lead not to liberation, but to alienation. In privileging the individual above all, he dismisses the emotional cost of disconnection. Contrasts idealized autonomy versus real human needs. Nietzsche scorns herd morality, equating it with stagnation. But moral codes, while imperfect, often reflect real attempts to organize life ethically amid complexity. The alternative Nietzsche offers, value creation by the strong, is vague in its ethics and elitist in tone. Who decides which values are worthy? Are the powerful inherently wiser? History shows otherwise. Charisma and strength often lead to demagoguery, not enlightenment. The ideal of autonomous value creation ignores how subjective bias, trauma, and ego distort judgment. We might admire Nietzsche's courage in challenging convention, but we must ask, what kind of world emerges from his vision? One where empathy is suspect, weakness scorned, and solidarity erased? Self-reflection, the ethics of responsibility. Nietzsche challenges us to look within and reject inherited truths. But what do we replace them with? If all values are constructs, are any worth defending? This is where humanism responds, not by denying the constructed nature of values, but by committing to those that foster human flourishing. We should reflect not only on how we are shaped, but how our choices shape others. Freedom isn't merely the absence of constraint, it's the capacity to live responsibly in relation to others. The will to power isolates. Humanism integrates. Beyond strength, a case for shared humanity. Nietzsche says power simply is, and moralism is self-deception. But this naturalistic view obscures the ethical imperative to protect the vulnerable. In a world governed solely by will, where does justice stand? What happens to compassion? A purely Nietzschean world may be more honest, but it would also be more brutal. Human rights, equality, care for the disabled, the elderly, the oppressed, these are not expressions of weakness, but of moral progress. Strength is not incompatible with care. True greatness lies not in the rejection of moral responsibility, but in its embrace. Conclusion, reclaiming meaning together. Nietzsche's vision is daring, but it sacrifices too much. It reveals the hidden forces behind morality, but offers a bleak alternative. In exposing manipulation, it risks glorifying domination. In dismissing inherited values, it leaves a void that cannot be filled by will alone. A richer philosophy balances autonomy with empathy, freedom with responsibility, individuality with connection. So ask yourself, are we stronger when we stand alone, or when we lift each other up? Is meaning a solitary achievement, or a shared creation? Perhaps the real power lies not in overcoming others, but in recognizing ourselves in them.